Welcome to the AWS lab. This is Dr. Zulfikar Kassam here with you from the Training Academy. Thank you for joining once again. Today we're going to do a simple lab and kind of introduce you to the AWS console and how things can be done over here. Okay. So when you log into the AWS console, things you'll notice in here is that basically we have this menu items available through here. So if you click on here that you can see all the different services that AWS offers you, right? All the way from analytics, all the way down, okay, to storage and so on and so forth, right? So things you'll come across a lot is compute, right? Compute is probably one of the first services you may end up using, compute EC2, right? This is the elastic cloud computing where you can build your virtual machines. Then we have the networking portion of things. So if you go to network and content delivery, you'll see the virtual private cloud. This is where you build your network. So we'll look at those two aspects today. You can, of course, build storage. So if you go to storage at the very bottom, you'll see S3 is a very, very popular storage service. Simple storage services, which is S3. And then we obviously have security in place, right? Where you create the usernames and user groups, which is the IAM, right? So these are the four things you will probably start up with first. And of course, as you go along, we can learn more things. So one way to open or access these things, as you can see, I can go from the menu and figure where they are, or if it's too difficult to remember where to go, you can just type in here, right? If you want to go to VPC, you can just type in VPC over here. This is for creating the virtual private cloud, right? Or you can go to IAM resources, and this will allow you to create users. The IAM, you can see it comes up in here, right? So top features are groups, users, roles, policies, access analyzer, right? So let's go back to VPC for just a moment, right? So if you click on it, it'll tell you, oh, this is where you're going to create your subnets, your routing table, your internet gateway, egress only internet gateways, right? There's a firewall manager, which is separate in here. Okay, that's different from VPC. VPC also allows you to build certain rules to be able to access the network, which we will come to later. Okay, for this moment, what we want to do is to understand that, as you could see, that you can either reach all the resources through this menu items in here, or you can just type in and you'll get to the resources that you would like to access. One thing you may want to notice here is which area or which region you are in. Yes, this is United States, North Virginia. So depending on where you live, you may want to choose an area which is within your vicinity, right, to get the best possible kind of performance, right, for where you are. Alrighty. So today we'll do a very simple lab, but which will illustrate some of the core aspects of AWS, right? So the first thing we'll do here is we're going to create our own custom virtual private cloud, right? Our own virtual private cloud with its own subnets, right? So I'm going to do is once we have logged into the console, we understand we are in, I'm going to be using US East North Virginia. I could use US West as well. US East North Virginia usually tends to have more resources in here, so that would be great to use. So I'm going to use that for my demonstration. So I'm going to click on VPC in here, right? Let's go to VPC services in here. Now you'll see the menu items have changed quite significantly here, right? So now you are being presented with the VPC dashboard, and we can see all the different options available within the VPC dashboard. You can see the VPCs here, the subnets. So nothing has been built in here, right? You can see here North Virginia 1. Okay, so this is available to us, my VPC here, but we're going to try and see if we can build a new one here. Okay, so what you're going to do is we're going to create a VPC. So we're going to click on here, create VPC. Okay, and we're going to create a VPC only, and we're going to call this VPC our lab dash VPC. Okay, we're going to use the IP version 4 CIDR block. So it's going to be, we're going to give it 10.0.0.0/16. We're going to create a /16 network. Okay. And tenancy will be default. Nothing else needs to change in here, right? Okay. And we're going to create this VPC. You can see you successfully create the VPC. Okay, which is the lab VPC. So let's look at our lab VPC, which is 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, which is IP version 4. Okay, so you can look at the CIDR here associated with it that we just created. Okay. All right, so here we are. We can see the VPC that we have created. I ended up deleting the other VPC that was there just to avoid confusion. So we have our lab VPC in here. If you go to your VPCs in here, see the lab VPC we just created. The state is available. Okay, and 10.0.0.0/16 is here. So now we're going to create subnets. So the first process is to create the virtual private cloud. Within the virtual private cloud, you can create multiple subnets. And of course, you can create multiple VPCs, and you can create VPCs in different regions as well, right? So right now we're trying to do a simple VPC and create a couple of subnets within this VPC. So now we're going to click on subnets here. So we can go to the subnet here and say create subnet. Now that we are ready to create a subnet, we have to select a VPC that we're going to use to create a subnet in. So we have the 10.0.0.0/16. So the first subnet name, we'll call it, let's say, let's say this subnet, let's say, is going to be public. Okay. So the name is going to be public dash subnet, for example. Availability zones, select one of the availability zones here. So let's look at here. So let's say you can see we have 6 different availability zones available to us. Personally, to be honest to you right now, I don't have a preference. But if you want, you could decide to choose any of them, right? If you're going to stagger your servers across multiple available zones, it is better you choose, let's say, 1A for one of them, 1B for the other one, and so on and so forth. Right now, we don't need to have any preference right now. We're not working with Hy-Vee at this moment in time, but in general, you may end up doing so. Okay. So now we have the CIDR block that we're going to use. So the first one, it's going to be 10.0.1.0/3. Okay. So we're going to create this subnet. And we're going to add a new subnet, the second subnet. So we did the first one already, which is we call the public subnet. This one, we're going to call it private subnet. Okay, once again, I won't give it any preference in here. the CIDR block in the VPC CIDR block is obviously the same, but the IP4 subnet CIDR block is going to be obviously different. So we're going to call it 10.0.2.0/24. So now we have created or wanting to create two subnets in here. So let's review this. We have the VPC 10.0.0/16. Within there, we're going to create two subnets, 10.0.0.1.0/24, and the other one is 10.0.0.2.0/24. So this network address is 10.0.2 in this case, and in the first one is 10.0.1. Because the first three octets based on the subnet mask implies that this is going to be the network address. And now we're going to create subnet here. So creating subnet 1, creating subnet 2. So now we have created two different subnets. And you can see them right there, right? You can see the subnet public, which is 10.0.1.0/24. You can see the private one, 10.0.2.0/24. All right, so now the next thing we would like to do is to go into the public subnets and allow it to auto-assign a public IP address. Okay, so we're going to the public subnet here. You can see the public subnet here. Let's click on the public subnet over here. And we can see that the auto-assigned public IP4 address is no right now. Right? So by default, it will be no for any subnet that you create. Right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to actions here and say edit subnet settings. And what you're gonna do is enable auto assign public IP address. Okay. And then we're gonna save this change that we just made. Okay, so you have successfully changed subnet settings. So now you can see auto assign public IP addresses is on for the public subnet. So now what we have done here, as you can see, going back to the subnets here, we have created two subnets within this VPC. We have one VPC. You can see the lab VPC has two subnets that we have created. If you want to look at the VPC again, it's right here. And we have created two subnets within this lab VPC. And we have allowed the public subnet to assign or auto assign public IP addresses. All right, one thing we do need to do is to create an internet gateway. So let's do that. Let's create an internet gateway. So my internet gateway. Create internet gateway. Okay. And what we do need to do with this internet gateway is attach to a virtual private cloud, right? And this is, we're gonna connect it to the lab VPC. So attach the internet gateway. So now you can see in here, we have internet gateway. We have that internet gateway attached to our lab VPC. So the next piece is that we'll have to create a route table, right? So we're gonna go to the route tables in here, and we're gonna say create a route table for the public subnet, right? So we're gonna create a public route table, okay? So my route table, select a VPC for the lab VPC in here. And create route table, okay? So now we have a route table destination 10.0.0.16. It's active in here. All right, let's go edit routing here. And let's go and add another route in here, which 0.0.0 to the internet gateway. We did, and we're going to save these changes. Okay, so now we have a routing table in here, which means basically if it's 10.0.0.0/16, it's a local routing that will happen. Otherwise, if anything else it doesn't know, it will send these packets to the internet gateway. So now you can see we have the internet gateway that we initially had defined. My internet gateway, we have a routing table that basically will send packets over to the internet gateway. Okay, so now we are at this stage. We do need to associate the subnet with this routing table. So we'll go to subnet associations in here. We'll go edit subnet associations, and we'll associate with this with the public subnet. So let's save this association in place, right? Because we want to use it for the public subnet. Now we're going to create a virtual machine. So for that, we can go to the EC2 itself, right? The EC2 is where we would create virtual machines. So we can click on the EC2. Now, this is the elastic cloud computing resource. You can see nothing is running. Instances running is 0. So there's nothing running in here. So if you go into instances, that's why you'll be able to see any virtual machines that you have created. So far, we haven't created any virtual machine. Right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to go launch instance. Now, when you go to launch instance, you can see we have a lot of different operating systems to choose from. Right? You can create an Amazon Linux machine, the Mac operating system machine, which is very interesting. And there's Ubuntu, Windows, of course, Red Hat, SUSE Linux, and Debian Linux as well. Right? So if I click on here, Windows, right, it will give me an option of using Windows Server 2025 as a base. I'm not sure if I want to do that at this moment in 2025 as a base. So, but let's go ahead and let's see where we are here. So what we'd like to do is to try and use the free tier eligible. Okay, so this is free. T3 micro is free tier eligible, so they won't charge you money for that. But the capacity is very limited in here in terms of 1 gig of memory, so that's kind of really low, right? So let's go with the small. We have 2 vCPUs, at least 2 gigs of memory here. So at least we can do certain things with this, right? Now here, we're going to choose which operating system we're going to go with. So we're going to go with the free tier eligible 2019 base image. Okay, so we're going to go with Microsoft Windows Server 2019 base image, which is free tier eligible, right? And then we have the T3 small, which has only 2 gigs of memory available to it, but should be good enough for demonstration purposes, right? Okay. Now, in terms of network settings over here, we can see we're going to be using the lab VPC. We're going to be using, well, here's where we can change things, right? We can connect it to the public subnet. So let's edit the settings, network settings in here. What we would like to do is to use the VPC, but we would like to use the public subnet. Auto assign public IP has been enabled. And there is a create security group. Okay, the security group here rule is RDP source from anywhere using TCP 3389 over here. So basically, to kind of make it clear, a security group basically is a set of firewall rules that control the traffic for your instance, right? So we're going to create a security group which is going to say, hey, I'm going to allow RDP access, right? Sources anywhere. Now here I could choose my IP, which is kind of a smarter thing to do. Okay. To choose your own IP address. So that means I can only, somebody can only log in from my location, which is kind of a much smarter way to do things. I don't allow anybody out there on the internet. And the same thing is for you. You don't allow anybody from the internet to try and connect to your machine, right? So you want to restrict this access to my IP. It automatically finds your IP. And that's where we are with this. All right, let's see what other settings we do need to. Okay, so we need to create a new key pair in here. .pem. And here we'll call it Windows 2019 AWS. Okay. .pem will allow you to use OpenSSH, and otherwise you can use PuTTY. Okay, so we'll create a key pair. Okay, there I can go and open this key pair and have a look at it if I want on the side here. Okay, this is my key pair for the pen. All right, so this is where we are. You can see as far as storage is concerned, you can change these values if you like. I'm just using 30 gigs for now. It should be good enough, right? So we're going to launch this instance using the software image, which is Microsoft Windows Server 2019. We're going to use T3 small, gives us the free tier advantage, and the storage volume is 30 gigs. So you can preview the summary over here, and we're going to launch the instance here. Okay, so now it's creating the launch instance. So let's look at the log so far. Succeeded, succeeded, succeeded. Everything seems to have succeeded. Now, let's see if we can connect to the instance. Agents to connect system and to enrich itself with the service. Okay, let's try and use the RDP client. Okay, so the RDP client should allow us to connect using an administrator. Let's get the password here. Password, please wait for 4 minutes after logging in before trying to retrieve the auto-generated password. Okay. So let's wait for a bit in here. I'll just pause this for a moment. All right, so in the meantime, I've clicked download remote desktop file. So I have my RDP file now available to me. And now let's see if we can get the password. So let's go and click get password. It's asking me to upload the private key file. Okay, file and upload it in here. So what we can do is ask it to decrypt the password for us. So this is the password. So I'm just going to copy over this password so I can use it. Okay, so all right, so I have my password that I can use to connect already. So, and I have my RDP file as well that I have downloaded. So I'm going to use that to connect. And you can see it is prompting me to type in the password. The password I've recorded from where you saw me download it from, right? So I'm going to copy and paste this password here. Continue on. Let's continue on in here. And finally, looks like I am logging into my machine that I had built. There we go. We are now on AWS on a server 2019 that we built in AWS, and we have full control of this server we just built, right? Isn't that fantastic? So now you know how you can set up a Windows server in AWS and access it externally as well. All right. So you can see the public IP address, you see the private IP address, T3 small. This was in US East, right? Has an MD processor, just 2 gigs of RAM because we wanted it for free, and network up to 5 gigs in size. Fantastic. Have a great day. And I hope you enjoyed this little lab that I had demonstrated to you. Please take care. Have a good one.